If you can, please put your organization to your name so you know where you're from. And again, a very warm welcome to the 8th webinar with the topic of chemical transfers and migration in reusable packaging, plastic packaging today. This is our 8th webinar. We are doing a monthly webinar of Planet Reuse. Planet Reuse is
Dankjewel.
First, can you please all put off your microphone? Yes. It's the Planet Reuse is the first European online platform and network bringing together professionals to connect, learn, and collaborate on the topic of reuse and reusable packaging solutions. The platform went live in September last year, and today we already have over 1,200 registered members on the platform from over 400 organizations. So if you're not registered yet, please do so, or be invited to do so. My name is Nicole Seyring, and I'm happy to moderate this session today. Here with me is Audrey Reinsdorfer. She's doing the technical stuff and helping with the whole setting up of the webinar. Thanks, Audrey, for that. If you like to ask questions during the webinar, you are free. Please feel free to do that in the chat. So you can type your questions already while we have the panel discussion in the chat. We will pick them up during the discussion or afterwards. We also have time to have a look at your questions and to get them answered. Please also feel free to use reaction buttons, smileys, wavings, or even also if you disagree with something. It's always nice to have some reactions from the audience. This webinar is getting recorded. We will share the replay on our YouTube channel and also within the Planet Reuse platform afterwards. So let's start. We are around 60 participants today. Nice that you all find the time to listen to this webinar today and to take part in the webinar. We have a great audience today, a great panel today, and I will introduce you to the panelists in a minute. This webinar today is titled with chemical transfer and migration in reusable plastic packaging, and I will give you some insights of the topic and also some arguments why we choose this topic for the session today. Chemicals tend to migrate from a material to food or to beverages when it comes to direct contact. This is in particular the matter for plastic packaging, and chemical migration can lead to unintended negative impacts on human health by absorption of endocrine disruptors and carcinogens, meaning that the uptake of the chemicals could interfere body's hormones or cause cancer. And Birgit, who is one of the panelists today, will explain some more of this later. Migration does, of course, not only happen in single-use packaging, but also in particular in reusable packaging. So that's why we have to have a look and will have a discussion around this topic. According to a database of the Food Packaging Forum, 372 contact chemicals identified in reusable plastics are going to migrate, more or less, in food or food simulants, out of 509 chemicals. Somebody is having their, hold on, I fixed that, okay. Further, the current regulatory testing requirements do not really reflect the realistic daily routines of reusable plastics, including many usage cycles, dishwashing, heating, and microwaving. So the question of today is, how much do we need to concern about migration of chemicals in reusable packaging, and how can we ensure that emission of substances of high concerns and contamination of reusable packaging is avoided? And how can we work together on this topic, of course? And so before I introduce you to the panelists, we have a very short icebreaker question, and we plan to have a little poll, which I hope is working now, but I'm not quite sure. And we have two questions. First is, and we try to have very simple questions with daily usage in daily life. So the first question is, are you using plastic food containers at home? Yes or no? And did you ever put it in the microwave? Yes or no? And Audrey is starting the poll right now. Is she? Question mark.
Nicole, I cannot launch it, so if we can use the chat to provide some inputs. So if you don't mind repeating maybe the two questions for everybody to add on their feedback.
Yes, so Audrey is putting the questions in the chat. First question, are you using plastic food containers at home? Just use a thumb or say yes or no. And then in a while, the second question, did you ever put the plastic reusable packaging in the microwave? Yes or no? There are already coming a lot of yes. We expected that actually. Yes, so this is just to get you an impression that everybody is working, using at home in daily life with plastic reusable packaging, or most of us do. Let's have the introduction to the panelists. We have a great panel today, bringing together scientific, political, and practical experience. And we have here Birgit Geueke, Dorota Napierska, and Casper von Uijtert. And Birgit is Senior Scientific Officer at the Food Packaging Forum. She focuses on science approaches to understand chemicals in food packaging and their effects on human health. She's involved in developing a database to gather the evidence of this topic and make the underlying science available. And she currently co-leads the Food Contact Chemicals and Human Health Project. And Birgit holds a PhD in biology, so she really knows what she's talking about. And before joining the Food Packaging Forum, she has many years of experience working in research with biocatalysts, with biodegradation, and with chemicals in the environment. Then secondly, we have Dorota Napierska she's policy officer on toxic-free circular economy at Zero Waste Europe. Her main focus is on safety of chemicals and materials, involved in policy, discussion on packaging, translating and using the scientific evidence Birgit is making to political and practical evidence advice. Dorota is has a degree in biomedical science and also a PhD. And prior to Zero Waste Europe, she was leading the Safer Chemicals program at Healthcare Without Harm Europe. And last but not least, we have Casper von Uijtert from MEIKO. He is Sales Support Engineer and Coordinator at MEIKO, Netherlands. And in his position, he is responsible for coordinating the communication between MEIKO and its customers and provides technical support for complex installation. The MEIKO group develops, produces and sells professional dishwashing machines for the HoReCa sector, for restaurants, hotels, and so on, but also disinfection machines for nursing homes, hospitals, and so on. So very warm welcome, the three of you, and we will start our discussion round now. As I said, you can ask your questions to the audience in the chat. So feel free, if you have a question in between, just to put it in the chat. Birgit, let's start with you. And I know that you brought us some nice slides to show what you are doing. So first question is, you are a scientist doing research to understand how chemicals are reacting in packaging, and in particular in food packaging. Could you explain very shortly the main aspects of your research, and explain first how chemical migration works, and second, what kind of chemicals are critical? Are critical. The floor is yours. Thank you. You're still unmuted, Mike. Birgit. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, I couldn't catch the bar with the unmute button, but now my mouse was quick enough. Thank you, Nicole, for your first question. And yeah, I've I knew that before, and I got the opportunity to prepare some slides because it's a huge topic. I could talk like very long about this, so I had to try to boil it down to a few minutes to explain you the context of chemical migration from food packaging. So I know I can't cover all, but let's give it a try. So when I started working at the Food Packaging Forum 10 years ago, I really thought, oh, this is something you can work on, you can have a job on. And after 10 years, I have to say, yes, it's really a big topic. It's a very complex topic. So, but first of all, let's talk about food packaging as such. And we are here because we know food packaging is essential. It's very central to the way we buy and sell the food today. And it has been essential for many years because you have to store food and protect it from spoilage. And you have to enable transport and logistics and, yeah, as I said, the retail of food products. It has many more functions. You also know it also supports communication and marketing, all this. So food packaging, we need this. And on the picture you see, we invented many different types of food packaging and applications and materials to fulfill these functions. We also all know about. Can I move? Yes, we all know also about the not nice sides of food packaging, which cause a lot of problems in the environment. I think this is the worst once it is littered. If the waste is not managed properly, then we end up with scenes like this, and we certainly don't want to see anything like this. And even if waste managing is working better than here, of course, it has negative impacts on the environment because food packaging uses a lot of resources, and it's producing CO2 if you burn it or if you put it into landfill. So these are the visible problems. Even more, there are invisible problems or concerns related to food packaging. So this is still a question on the slide, but indeed we should be concerned about the invisible properties of food packaging because of this process, which we call chemical migration. So all materials, it's not only plastics, all materials can release certain chemicals from the surface into the food. And that strongly depends on the different properties of the material and many other factors. I have a slide of that. And it also depends on the chemical composition of the material. So there are, like, plastic is made of many different materials. Paper and board is using a lot of different chemicals during production. Then you use printing inks and coatings, and it's getting sometimes very, very complex. You may glue different layers on top of each other. So chemical migration, once you start looking or zooming into the material, is a problem. And we know that there are like more than 10,000 chemicals used to produce all different food packaging types. We have evidence then that more than 4,000 can leave the packaging again and end up in the food. There may be even more because in the production others are synthesized. So you already see I have numbers and details, and this would be the part where I could talk a lot, but I stop myself now to explain you the problem of this chemical migration. So we know that there are chemicals which migrate, which certainly have negative effects on human health. Then we know that there are chemicals which have never been tested, and we even know that there are chemicals which we don't know. That's complicated. And so we are exposed to mixtures of chemicals on a daily basis at low levels, so they don't cause acute toxicity. So we are not getting sick immediately, of course, but in the long term, they may cause really negative effects on our health. And it's very difficult to control and to manage. That's one of the messages. And it also strongly depends on the material. And then my last slide here cannot provide you an answer, but it can maybe help you to provide or to find a way to deal or to manage this problem, because we know all the factors which could influence migration. And I've mentioned it before. First of all, it's the material properties. So for example, paper and board has a low barrier. So maybe the printing inks on the surface can migrate through the packaging. And then plastic is made out of many different chemicals. Then the third example here in my picture is glass. And there you also have migration, but to a far lower level. And it's only limited to surface phenomena. So it's not coming from the whole material. And then there are other factors which could have an influence. It's also important to look at the food. So whether you have a fatty food, you see olives here or French fries, they tend to absorb chemicals which like fat. And then there are liquid foods like milk or soft drinks. If it's acidic, other chemicals end up in the food. If you have something with a high surface, such as flour or rice, it can have an effect. And then there are also foods which may not be so critical. So if you have an egg, it's already packaged, and then it would be like this cardboard box is like a secondary packaging which needs to pass the eggshell first. So this, I think, is not of a very high concern here. And then the third part which you have to consider when you think about chemical migration is the treatment and the way you handle the packaging and the food. So how long do you store it? At which temperature do you store it? So longer times and higher temperatures increase migration. Then the third thing is the portion size. If you would like to sell very small portion sizes, then you have to take care of migration much more carefully, because you have a relatively high surface and compared to the portion of the food. So if you think of a small ketchup package in a fast food restaurant compared to a bottle, you can imagine that the small portion is having more issues related to migration. Then, we already heard about the microwave. So again, heating or microwaving or dishwashing can have an effect on the material, especially for reuse. I think this is important to keep in mind. What are people doing with the packaging? And then also, how often are you planning to use any kind of packaging or other food contact material, the things in your kitchen? That, of course, also can have an influence because materials can age over time. And with that, I have another slide just to show you what we are working on and what kind of questions we try to find answers to. And we have also, of course, a lot of information on our website, so you can reach out to me if you would like to know something more specific. And thank you for having the chance to talk about this in the beginning here.
Thank you, Birgit, for your input. Yes, and we will talk about this in more detail later. I think it already gave a very good overview on what factors are there. And let's talk later a bit about the maybe also the difference of reusable packaging and single-use packaging. Yes. But next coming to Casper, because Casper is working on a day-to-day basis with reusable packaging. He's cleaning such packaging in the MEIKO treatment facilities. And you are working with different materials, I guess, not only plastic, but also glass and steel and so on. Can you explain, Casper, shortly, how the washing process is going, how it's working, and if there are important aspects in the cleaning process, including the question of migration of chemicals? Is it a question for you also, migration of packaging into food? Can you do something in your facilities to decrease the risk of migration? Is this a topic at all for you, or are you rather bothering about completely other topics? Casper.
And thank you very much for this short little introduction. So we at MEIKO develop machines for getting food off of packaging of reusables, and reusables we tend to also say, like, hey, so a porcelain cup or a glass bottle is also reusable. So therefore we do more work with getting the food off of the material, but of course we do take a look at what is the effect of our material that we use. For us, we in the cleaning industry, people talk about the sinner circle. In very short, it is to get something clean, you need certain aspects. You need either by mechanically you can clean it, by chemically you can clean something, you can clean it by time or by temperature. This is for disinfection. This is and you need these 4 parts to get something clean. And the more you use mechanical power, the less you need chemicals and so on and so on. So therefore, in our machines, we look into optimizing the force, so the mechanical power of the water and the temperature, so that we don't need to use as much chemicals, because of course in the washing process we do introduce also chemicals. We use alkaline materials to clean, and then next we use acid material to neutralize again. So the footwear that gets into contact with materials. However, we try to lower those dosages as low as possible. So yeah, what can we say about the materials? We've seen, for instance, I think you all went to canteens or somewhere where you had your tray, your food tray, and you went and got your food. Those are made of plastic. So and what we see in our machines is those trays come and go and come and go, and then you can see the mechanical wear, and there that's where we do the most chemical migration, actual plastic particles letting go of those. So that's in short a bit where we see the practical side of this migration.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So you also mentioned another aspect now, that not only the chemicals migrate from packaging into food, but also from the packaging into the water at the end, into washing water, and we have the whole micro plastic problem at the end. Yes, thanks for explaining us very short what's important in your processes. I took from your very little talk that you're making the temperature higher to lower the chemical usage, and maybe you can ask back afterwards, Birgit, what she thinks that has an effect on the migration.
Yes.
At the end. But coming to Dorota, you are working within a third perspective of the topic, the policy side. And you are going to shortly show us what are the main regulations on EU level when it comes to chemical migration from packaging to food, what is currently under discussion, and what is critical or need to be improved from your perspective on the regulation.
Yes, thank you, Nicole, and Planet Reuse for having me here. Thanks for the nice introduction. I hope you see my slides. I always have to ask it before start talking. So yes, jumping directly on regulation. I'm afraid that my presentation, short one, 3 slides, it's not really so nicely visual as the one for Birgit, but yeah, the regulations for some people are really kind of perceived like a boring stuff. But I think we all agree that we need good regulations and good enforcement actually also to solve a lot of problems that Birgit also brought before. So basically in the EU, the principal basic legal act covering all materials used in all kinds of food packaging, so single-use, reusable, is Regulation 1935 from 2004, also known as Food Contact Materials Regulation. And the Article 3 of this law sets the rule that the materials and articles have to be manufactured this way, that they do not transfer the chemicals to food in quantities which could endanger human health. So as logic and as clever this rule sounds, is actually, and unfortunately, is too generic and does not really define how safety should be achieved or how be actually demonstrated. And from 17 materials that are listed in the regulation, so all those that can be used also in the food packaging, only 5, including plastics, have more specific rules. And this is important actually also on how things are regulated on the EU level. But also taking into consideration all the evidence we have now, about also migration and how we actually are not really able to control the chemicals to the way we should. We actually, it's became really apparent that the current laws actually are too weak and do not properly protect consumers. And talking about what is currently under the discussion, so I just would like to briefly really show a picture of different policy files because they all actually more or less are having impact on food packaging and its chemical safety. And basically what we can say that there is absolutely no doubt that the EU has placed a huge emphasis on plastics and its sustainability over the last few years. So we have the European plastic strategy that is also saying that all plastic packaging should be reusable or should be recycled by 2030. And then the substances that hamper those recycling processes should be replaced or phased out. Then in 2019, I think known by everyone, the Single-Use Plastic Directive has been adopted. And then we have seen for the first time like a really mandatory recycled content in the PET beverage bottles. Then 2020, so the year that actually followed the announcement of Green Deal, was a year when the Commission really published a lot of very clever, ambitious plans and strategies, starting with a new circular economy action plan that announced establishment of rule for the safe recycling of materials into the plastic, also in the food packaging other than PET. We have since then also the strategy from FARC to fork. It's important one because this strategy also promised the revision of food contact materials legislation, clearly to improve safety and public health, and in particular to reduce the use of hazardous chemicals. You have also in 2020 in October, ambitious chemical strategy for sustainability has been published, and which put a lot of emphasis on so-called non-toxic material cycles, and really puts emphasis also that we need better protections against most of the harmful chemicals, including in food packaging. So in December 2020, in the same year, actually the European Commission started a revision of so much, actually really revision and outdue, I would say, because this law was not reviewed since very beginning of, so 2004 at least, started the revision of food contact materials regulation. So 2021 that's the year that we participate in public consultations. There are meetings, exchanges between different stakeholders. And also important, in the mid of 2022, Commission also published like official evaluation of the food contact materials regulation. It took actually 4 years, a lot of information, a lot of feedback provided by all different kind of stakeholders. And unfortunately, the conclusions are not so good because confront what we already knew, but was from this evaluation, it's really clear that this law is still having many deficiencies and shortcomings. And one of the, I would say also more important for discussion today is that safety is insufficiently defined in the EU level for most of the food contact materials. And then that safety of migrating substances actually is also not transparent. So basically, actually, we cannot be sure if the food packaging that are put today on the market is actually safe. But then in the same year, we also noticed adoption of the new regulation on the use of recycled plastic into food contact materials. So this is something that, that is also a consequence of those plans to have more recycled content in the food packaging. And of course, something I think we all are very close now, we hear a lot of discussions and exchanges. In November 2020, Commission also published the revised legislation of packaging and packaging waste, where we have emphasis on recycled content, the new targets for food packaging, for other plastics than PET, and there we also have the targets on reusable and refillable packaging. So this is also when this in this regulation, Commission also brings the need to have in the future better rules actually about hygiene, safety of those reusable and refillable packaging. And without this happening actually, at the end of the same year, unfortunately, the Commission announced that it's delaying the revision of those, crucial overarching chemical regulation of food contact materials that should actually really, finally, bring the good new rules and how to better regulate the hazardous chemicals. Instead, we have more or less seeing business as usual. So apart from a lot of work going now on the implementation of this new regulation of plastic recycling, we also, the Commission is working on the amendments to the plastic regulation. So this is a regulation that is regulating substances that are authorized to use in any plastic food contact materials and food packaging. So all together, when we kind of summarize what happened in the last couple of years and what did not happen, well, I would conclude that as more sustainable circular economy solutions are developed, and also like we have a lot of discussion about more sustainable food packaging, the critical aspects actually of chemical safety are still left behind. And there are a lot of resources on our website, so I'm not really going to the detail, but if you look at those briefings we produce, we kind of like really go into detail and give more good justification of our conclusion. When you ask yourself then the question, so what is really critical and needs to be improved from our perspective? And I would say, so first of all, we have to really keep in mind that any food packaging can only be sustainable when it's safe. We still have this kind of divergent discussions when we talk about sustainability and safety apparently, and I think it's not really well justified. And as a matter of priority, the food contact material framework regulation should be really comprehensively revised and as soon as possible. And the best way is actually to ensure safety of food packaging. Again, is it single use or is it reusable? Is simply avoiding the upstream introduction of hazardous chemicals. So this is basically, we should uphold to the promises and to the principles that chemical strategy of sustainability actually also put. So first, stop using, try to phase out all the most hazardous chemicals during manufacturing of the packaging. And then finally, we also think that this revised packaging waste regulation, that is still not really, the process of adoption is still on the way, but it also should really adequately address those non-toxic aspects of used chemical substances and the materials, because we talk really about the whole life cycle of packaging. So we should definitely minimize environmental footprint. We should more recycle, we should definitely more reuse, but we should at the same time pay attention to minimize of the best, not to use at all any hazardous chemicals. Now that I think it would be enough. I hope I didn't bore you too much with so much text on my slides.
Thank you, Dorota. No, you didn't bore us at all. I think it's a complex topic and a complex regulation behind, as we just seen. I want to pick up some aspects, what you've just saying. And first is, because we already got a question in the chat, and this question is one of my next question I would going to ask also. It's Frank asked, he's a provider of reusable packaging. Okay, what exactly is the difference between migration processes and reusable packaging and single-use packaging? We heard already some aspects from Birgit. Is there any recent studies? And we have in the chat already a study from KIDV and also from the Food Packaging Forum. But maybe you could emphasize again, Birgit, and also Dorota from the political side, okay, what needs to be done? You just mentioned that we need other or different regulations maybe for reusable packaging than single-use packaging when it comes to food contact, but what is really the difference? And the second question, what are the substances of concern you just mentioned? Is there a list of whatever 5 or 10 substances where you really say, okay, that's the list, please don't use it, try to phase it out? What is the hint there? Birgit, maybe you can start.
Okay. Well, there were many questions in this. I start with the last one. So I have mentioned in my short intro, we know that there are like 4,000 chemicals that have the potential to really migrate from all different types of packaging into food. Of course, not all of them do it all the time because they are not in all the different packaging types. We have another list of chemicals because we looked at all these which can migrate, and we checked what hazard data are published in official databases. And there we have several hundred. So I think the number is 608, but my colleague should know even more details. But these 600 chemicals have hazard data which should make them banned in food packaging. So they are either carcinogens, so they may cause cancer, they disrupt the endocrine system, they are not degradable in the environment, they can bioaccumulate in the body. So there are a few more properties. They may have specific toxicity towards organs in your body, so liver toxicity, or they may affect the kidneys, and so on. So there are many, you see. These are the ones which have been tested. And then from this list, there are a few names many people may have heard of, like the bisphenol A, or the fluorinated substances, the PFAS, or the plasticizers, the phthalates. They have so much data that there is action happening, and there are efforts to reduce the amount, but still it's not there yet. We still measure them. They're widely used, and so they are not banned, although there is regulatory work going on.
Okay, Dorota, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, that's really such a lot of questions, and I think we could probably talk for hours. Well, first, maybe to make it clear, we don't really need, I think, I mean, we definitely need specific rules for all the materials, because we talked today, of course, about plastics, but there are all other materials, and and actually also those materials that are used in the packaging made from plastic, like reusable plastic containers, they also include those different materials mentioned already by Birgit. So coatings, adhesives, printing inks, they are actually classified as different materials, although in this food contact materials regulation, but we do not have like a harmonized rules. So there can be different, requirements in Germany, can be different in Belgium, etc. And this is very, I think, difficult then to say what rule actually the business should apply to container. That's first. So, and I think that there is definitely the room if we would have really comprehensively revise those food contact materials regulation, we could also properly include there the rules that we need, some extra rules that we need for the reusable packaging, those that are indeed more really related to those repeated cycles, that how the material is behaving, degrading, how it's absorbing chemicals, etc. So within this review, and I believe actually that the Commission is also having the plan to also address those reusability, although it's, of course, now it's really too early to say what will come up of that, but we do not really need like a lot of many new regulations. We need to really revise this one that we have and improve some harmonized rules for all the materials, as I would say. And yeah, substances of concern. So this is something that is well now discussed. And for example, in the food packaging, in the packaging and packaging waste regulation, the definition of substances of concern will be actually the same definition that is now introduced in the eco design for sustainable product regulation. So that's something that it's a bit of difficult to tackle, because we have a lot of laws that is actually now still under the discussion. They are not really fully adopted, but there are some new rules and some new definitions coming with those laws, and that's basically what it means, that will be the list of different hazards, and so those hazards, if any chemicals actually is shown to have the hazard from those lists, should be recognized as a substance of concern. And maybe I will just finish, because there was a question about, yeah, do we have the list? Can we just name those chemicals? Well, just coming back to the chemical strategy for sustainability, I know that Food Packaging Forum also published like a really dedicated publication when those chemicals are now used in the food packaging, and they are migrating, and they actually fulfill those most harmful, hazards that are defined in the chemical strategy for sustainability. There are, I think, 380 of substances, and there actually you can really find this list when you check the publication. So we'll exactly know which we should maybe prioritize, because of course, I mean, we cannot just do everything at once, and I think we have to just decide what will be the next step. And I think this is also quite good list, this 380 chemicals to see if those what is the chance that they are in your reusable packaging, and start to think, yeah, how to get rid of them.
Okay, thank you. You named, Birgit, you just named some of the substances, phthalates, PFAS, bisphenol A. When I'm right informed, on Tuesday, the European Parliament just voted for the new PPVR, and they voted 56 against 23 votes for the current proposal of the packaging waste regulation. And one compromise amendments included there is to ban 2 types of harmful substances in food contact, and one is PFAS and the other one is bisphenol A. So that might be a good development, at least on the packaging regulation side, that those 2 pollutants are banned. I think there is it's not completely banned, but yeah, actually I don't know the details. Maybe you know it. If not, we check this up afterwards. It's very new information. But both of the substances are used in particular in single-use packaging in takeaway restaurants. I'm not sure if it's also used on a big, if so, it would be the question, maybe Birgit again, okay, what are the aspects now? How can we decrease the risk of medication of substances of reusable packaging given to the users of reusable packaging? So is there any advice, how you can just decrease the risk of migration of chemicals for reusable packaging?
I unfortunately had a little bit or a few interruptions, but I think I got your question. So you mentioned BPA and PFAS. Can you hear me properly? Or maybe okay.
Now it's better again. Try it again.
Okay. So you mentioned PFAS and BPA. They are used in single-use packaging, but they are also used in reusable packaging. So BPA, for example, if you think of sports bottles or these big containers for water, if you just get a cup of water from a big container, that's polycarbonate, which is using BPA. So of course you could try to find out if it's used in these containers if you plan to use them. And PFAS is used in oil coated pans and baking forms and so on. So they are of concern for reusable packaging as well. I think that was one part of the question, and I think it would be a very good idea to ban them And then it would be a good idea to find safe replacements, because for BPA, often other very related chemicals are used nowadays. So it's a slightly different plastic in the end, but it may cause the same problems when the related chemicals are migrating. That was one part I got from your question, and I think you also asked for a comparison between single use and repeat use. There I would like to make one important point. So you have seen these illustrations with a lot of small colorful dots in my presentation. So the chemicals which are present in the material, such as plastic or paper and board, they are not really tightly bound. So they're not really sitting in the material. They may move in the material, and then they may migrate. And this process usually happens at a high level in the beginning, and then you wash it, and then some of them get out, and some of them migrate into your food, and then cycle after cycle, this is usually getting lower. That's good. But if you're using a plastic which is aging because you're heating it very often, or you leave it in the UV light, or you put it in a dishwasher with very strong detergents, then the chemicals which cannot migrate, which have been tightly bound, they may get loose again after maybe 40 or 50 use cycles. And then this migration may increase again. So it strongly depends on the time. And there are not many studies really doing this testing for many cycles. So it's required by law to do 3 testing cycles, and that's the period where migration usually goes down. But it's not required to do 50. And if you are planning to reuse your plastic cup 50 or 100 times, you don't know what happens in the end. So it's a little bit complicated, but we really should try to make sure that we cover the chemical safety over the whole lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so migration is high at the beginning. That means maybe that it would help if you wash it 2 or 3 times before you use it. Casper, is this a practice for reusable packaging which is done? So if reusable packaging is brought to the market new by the reusable pool systems or whoever, are they washed regularly, or do they have to be washed regularly? And second question to Casper, are there other standards in the washing process? Or what standards are you following, and other standards connected to the migration issue where you try to avoid this? And third question, but we already talked about this, can you also from the practice tell that after whatever 40, 50 cycles, the material is getting obviously is brittling and broken and whatever, has scratches, so migration would be easier, because we know that plastic packaging is usually confirmed for use of 500 cycle by the TÜV, at least in Germany that's the case. For glass it's 3000 cycles, but it's just the washing process, so the usage in between and heating and whatever is in between is not in the testing process. Casper.
Okay, now my microphone's on. Okay, so I looked a bit into this, and what I see here, what's happening is where we as a machine manufacturer apply to standards based on the machine. So there the product is on the side. So I feel like that we confirm to EN DIN 10510, which dictates how products should be washed in commercial and industrial washing solutions. But there it doesn't say anything in the standard regarding migration of plastics. So it's very interesting to see how we as an industry from the washing, we come from HoReCa, we come from hotels, we come from hospitals, where things that have been reused, so food packaging, so plates, bowls get washed, but there we don't take actually a look at the washware, the dishware, we actually take a look at the machine. So I feel like there's a dissonance between what that side of the regulations are doing. They're really looking at the machine, and the regulations where you from food packaging coming from single use going to reuse. I don't think those regulations are tied together, and in my opinion, that might be something we should work towards, tying those together.
Okay. And about the second question about aging of material, is that something you see, and what are you doing with those? I mean, is there some process to sort them out and say, okay, they cannot be used anymore? Because I mean, you are the one instance, I would say, who I mean, it's all automized, but at the end has a look at the cleaned and then packaging. So you could influence.
So there are in HoReCa, and there are rules for inspecting your dishware on how those things should be, and when something should be discarded, and said like, hey, this is not good. But there's no, from our side as a machine manufacturer, there's no control on there, as we don't always visit the customer, but then when we see things happening, we say like, hey, for instance, a good example, maybe not necessarily tied into this. So we as you said, we sell hygienic disinfectant machines for hospitals, baton washes specifically, and there we say, so when these pans are scratched, we can't disinfect them because the surface is not good anymore. And that's where we sometimes do those things, but for dishware, we just get what we get, and we wash when needed. But there's no regulation for us to say like, hey, this dishware is not good, or this dishware is good.
Okay. Thank you, Casper. Maybe there are some providers of reusable packaging in the room, and they can give their perspective in the chat also. Let's come to another topic, to the usage of secondary material, of recycled material. Dorota, you had some words about this also on the regulatory side, and we have also a question here, because one big issue also for reusable packaging is to close material loops, and also reusable packaging is coming to an end, to end of life after certain cycles, and a lot of providers are working on this to really close the cycles, to reuse their own material in the next packaging. And so far it has been focused a lot on PET, because it's coming also from the beverage sector. Yeah, the PET is reused, and the content of secondary material of PET is getting higher and higher, but also there are tests and developments on other plastics like PP or HDPE. So what about this? What about reusing recycling content? What is the problem there? And we also got one question in the chat connected to this. There's also this, especially in countries, in transition countries, there are still waste pickers who go to landfills, pick up plastic packaging, and this is recycled, maybe not in reusable packaging, but in single-use packaging. So how is the knowledge there, and how is your advice? Birgit, maybe you can start from the scientific point of view.
Yeah, we have tried to analyze the literature regarding the chemicals in recycled materials. And one of the big problems is it's usually not claimed. On PET bottles, you have these labels, and they say 100% recycled or 50% recycled or whatever, or contains recycled material. And PET is pretty much controlled, and I think there are processes in place which have or apply quite good criteria. Nevertheless, recycling introduces the risk of getting new chemicals inside, because you don't know if somebody has placed a solvent in the bottle and then puts it into the recycling, or the glue of the label and the lids. There may things may end up in the recycling which shouldn't be there. And then we saw that there are materials which are not recycled or not labeled as recycled, but they contain, for example, parts of old electronic equipment. And talking about the waste picker. So if something ends up in the recycling stream for new food packaging, which is in Europe at least certainly not legal, it can really contaminate the article. So there are flame retardants and heavy metals coming from electronics found in a lot of kitchen utensils. So there's also this big part which is obviously not according to the rules, but still happening, and we can buy these things. So recycling can open up a huge field and can increase contamination. And it's very difficult to control. So it should be, but you may have it in your home.
Okay, but then we kind of have a conflict, yeah, trying to close the loops,
big one,
but also trying to get rid of chemicals we don't want to have in there. Dorota, do you want to add something?
Well, yes. So I mentioned on my second slide this new regulation, so which was adopted last year. So that's in the EU basically. Now for any company that will use the recycled content in the food packaging, has to follow the rules from this regulation basically. So there are different rules. It's quite a big piece of it. So the idea is actually that we should only use the technologies that are authorized. So they are assessed, that they are safe and they are able to produce safe plastic, safe enough to be used in the food contact materials in the food packaging. Well, we had a different regulation from 2008, but actually we never really, the EFSA, so European Food Safety Agency, assessed more, I think around 260 technologies, mainly actually also on PET, as Birgit said, they issued the positive opinion. But then in the meantime, that's exactly what happens. There's a lot of other plastic present, so not PET, and this needs to also recycle it, and that will be mandatory for many food packaging manufacturers. So this new regulation is basically saying, that you need to have so-called suitable technology, and if it's authorized, then you can use the recycled plastic in your food packaging. At the moment, actually, we only have suitable technology for the PET, but this regulation is opening kind of like, the possibility for other technologies to register, at least at the moment, and to start, producing the plastic, but they are classified as a called novel technology. So they will actually have to go through this assessment in years to come. And there is very, very well explained procedure in those regulations. I'm not going really into the details, but also important. So anything actually that is also brought from any recycled plastic, you can also buy it from outside the EU, but it has to actually fulfill the same rules. So it has to use those technologies that are recognized in the EU. But how safe actually it is, this plastic, we cannot really say, because it's really very big beginning. The transitional process only passed in July this year, when basically from July this year, the recyclers cannot apply the national rules. Before there was a lot of national rules. So you could use some technology, for example, in Germany, because the German authorities were allowing your French, etc. Now, normally we have to, all the manufacturers and the recyclers should apply to this new regulation. But I mean, it's very early to say what will be the outcome, because all those assessments will have to happen. And so we actually still are at the very beginning. And there is, from my point of view, the problem is that, this new regulation is of course saying that demonstrating that we have the manufacturer has to demonstrate that the recycled plastic is as safe as the virgin one, and is again sending us to the rule of this Article 3 of Food Contact Materials Regulation, which we actually kind of agreed all that this regulation is not providing that even the virgin plastic is not safe enough. So it's a little bit tricky, let's say, situation, I would say. It's like I was saying, if you build something on the fundaments that are not really solid and safe, that's we maybe will be multiplying problems more than solving them in the future. And that's again, but we have to solve the problem with the Food Contact Materials Regulation. We need the good, clear, better rules there to provide the safety for all kinds of packaging and the materials.
Okay, thank you. I'm already in the process of picking up questions because we can have we have a lot of questions in the chat. Before we continue, we have about 10 minutes left. Audrey is just going to post a link to a little survey for the audience, just asking, okay, has it been the right topic and so on. So it would be great if you could, while listening, also filling out this little survey. So you have some minutes for this till we close the webinar. One question directly to this we were just discussing is how can we move, and I really like the question, away from slowing down the process or from the slow process of banning certain hazardous chemicals to getting a positive list, to having a list with chemicals on the list who are safe for humans, who are safe for the environment. Is there any are there any concrete plans to change this procedure, for example, from the EFSA? Is there any plans to just have a positive list? Because I mean that would be very helpful if you say, okay, this is a list of whatever 200 chemicals you can use in plastics and they are safe. Is there anything like this?
I don't know who's going.
Dorota, you're me.
Do it.
Okay, there is a positive list for plastic chemicals. So the plastics regulation, it's mentioned in the chat already, the 10/2011, that has a list of approximately 1,000 chemicals which are allowed to be used during the manufacture of your plastic packaging. The huge problem is that these are not the chemicals which end up in the final packaging. So talking about recycling and also normal plastic production, you always have a lot of other contaminants which may sneak in. And for example, it still contains bisphenol A, this positive list. So bisphenol A is allowed to be used in the manufacture of plastic. It's a very normal chemical for plastic producers. So of course you could say I take it off. But the main problem is that plastic is a material which you cannot boil down to the starting substances, to this positive list, because you end up with something completely different after the manufacturing. So it's more a chemical problem. So you need to look at the final article also. So it's good to know much about the starting substances, but you have to have a look at your plastic once it's ready. So it's not only putting the powders and liquids together and then start the reaction and then you think, okay, now I'm safe. It's needed to look at the final article. And I think that's a part of the discussion at the European Commission, or was a part of the discussion, that they mentioned it at least in the revision of the food contact legislation, that they would like to include this. And I think that would be very important.
Yeah, so exactly. So the Commission saying that the revised proposal will more focus on the final article than not the materials as now. But just very short on those, avoiding this single, chemical by chemical. So this is actually the whole idea that is also in the chemical strategy for sustainability, and something the Commission also is slowly moving to. So it's like really addressing the chemicals by groups. And like bisphenol A, so PFAS. mentioned that actually PFAS is not one substance, it's that 100, if not 1,000 different substances. And now the European Commission, the European Union wants to ban all of them actually. So basically we should not have any PFAS to be used intentionally in the food packaging once this will be adopted. And bisphenol is like a perfect example how we should really ban in the grouping, because we know that we have more than 100 different bisphenols. So TS and I don't know how many that they have very small change in the chemical structure. They basically are as harmful as bisphenol A. They have the same function, but they're from the regulatory point of view have different CAS number and they are not banned. So actually this is when we should immediately and that should go by law. We'll still see it's still not happening, but it should be. That's also the intention and the promise. But I think also from the point of view of any business, if you know that there is the bisphenol A will be, because actually it will be banned soon. The Commission is already working on the proposal. I mean, please do not really look for other bisphenol as the replacement, because it doesn't have really much future, and it brings you a lot of unnecessary then replacing in the years to come. So I think this also, if the industry would think the same immediately and apply this rule, that would be great, and we would have like a more significant move towards more safer materials.
Thank you. I want to pick up one more question about other usage than food. So are the migration issues the same with reusable packaging in other categories, for example, for personal care? I mean, we have developments to have lotion and shampoo and whatever in reusable packaging, and also the other way around. Is there reverse migration issues of the fragrance, for example, used in these products back to the plastic, making it unsuitable for reuse? And maybe Casper, you can say some word from your practice, because I guess it's the same with detergents you are using, maybe fragrances or other things. And is there any issues you are taking care of in the washing procedure, and maybe then we can transfer it to the issue of other detergents like shampoo or so?
Yeah, so I looked up a bit on our chemical that we use, and next to the alkaline material and the acidic material, we use surfactants to loosen up certain proteins or other materials. One of the issues within dishwashing, it's not necessarily an issue because it can be solved, but correct me if I'm wrong, but lipstick is one of the things that we see. We engineer it as engineer it as being resistive to water, resistive to chemicals, so that it stays longer on your lips. But that effect also, we see that on glasses, for instance. We see that stays on the glass, and that does require some more aggressive chemicals to take off. So yeah, for getting transfer from food or personal care to the plastic, yeah, we do see those things happening, and we try to mitigate that. And we hope we can mitigate it with mechanical washing and with time and temperature. But then sometimes, yes, we do need to use more chemicals, more aggressive chemicals. And then in the end, we need to neutralize them as well, because of the regulation at the end. It needs to be safe for use again. And then we do see that especially for food dishware, there are the regulations that we need to comply with. I think I put it in the chat as well. There's norms and standards for that as well.
Thank you. Birgit, Dorota, do you want to add something for the case of cosmetics?
Maybe it covers cosmetics and food. So when we talk about plastics, it's always like, and I'm pretty sure you have seen it at your home. plastic can also take up chemicals. So yeah, we mentioned that fragrances or tomato sauce. Sometimes the Tupperware stays red after you have put tomato sauce inside. So it can take it up and then it may release it in subsequent cycles. So that's something one should be aware of, that it's not only going into one direction, it can always go into several directions. And talking about reuse, yeah, it's probably not always possible to control what other people are doing. So the cleaning is very important. And maybe sometimes if it's taken up, it's not going out during cleaning, and slowly over the next cycles.
Yeah. Thank you. Not much time left, some questions left. I'm going to pick up two more questions. One is there any collaboration with EFSA? I mean, you mentioned EFSA already, and also to the REACH regulation. So how is this connected? Is it good connected? And the second one is, and that's maybe more comment than the question, that also card box and recycled card box has a high risk to release chemicals, and there was this case where this happened, so they changed again from card box to single-use foil actually. So just to mention that it's not only a plastic issue but also for other materials, probably not so much for glass and porcelain and steel, as I got it right, but also the case for card boxes in a way. So yes, maybe the question on EFSA and REACH regulation and how this goes together as a last question.
Okay, so I just will quickly, it's really the word. So I saw this question and I placed there actually the link to one of the briefings that we produced this year, that we published in the summer, because this actually exactly when we put all the regulation, how they interplay. And it's very often you think REACH is solving the problems, but not exactly when it comes to food contact materials as much, because when it comes to relation between the REACH and food contact materials, when the chemical is there, for example, assigned, is recognized the hazard for the human health, is actually, it's not regulated by REACH then, because it's this law, it's delegated the responsibility to food contact materials. So just give you the example, DHP, the very known well phthalate that should already be gone, it's used as plasticizer. When it was identified as the endocrine disruptor for human, it actually was not really applying directly to food contact materials. It was not really regulated at the same time. Once when it was classified as an endocrine disruptor for the environment, then indeed, then it's also, for example, food contact materials can also be recognized as those products that has to be, for example, there will be needed authorization through REACH, not through through the food contact materials. So it's not really really covering everything, and I just want to make it clear, because I hear it very often that by the way, REACH also has a lot of deficiency, and we are waiting for the review, and it's also delayed. So it's another problem from regulatory point of view. The EFSA, I mean, I'm not really aware that it's like EFSA is really scientific body, and of course, and I think that the ideas, of course, they will be involved in at some point in the assessment of the safety of the packaging and the reusable packaging. I'm not really sure if so much as much is going now, but I can only add that there are now probably there is not really like a huge amount of evidence they can assess, because we in the last 20-30 years we switch almost exclusively to single use, and there is like very, very little evidence actually for reusable packaging comparing to the single use. But we know that there are actually already ongoing, just maybe more at the starting point, but the big horizontal European projects that are involving scientists and the industries, and they actually are focused on reuse of plastic packaging, including the food, and checking all those migration, different cycle of reuse, setting the standards also of the protocol of testing, etc. So it's still early. I know that that's nothing really came up really much to share. But I expect that in 2-3 years, we will have more outcome from those projects. And I hope that they will be actually really, giving a good basis to go into the right direction.
Thank you very much. Yes, there are still some questions left. I propose that we follow up on the discussion on planet reuse. We have chats there, we have a forum there where you can also raise your question. And we take the questions from the chat which are not answered with us and try to answer them afterwards at the platform. So if you're not registered, please be invited to register to the platform. And please also use our little poll to get your feedback on this webinar. Yes, one sentence of each of you, of the panelists. What is the key information the audience should take to the lunch break or from the webinar today? And then we're saying goodbye. Dorota, please start.
Well, surprise, surprise, we need a better regulation, better rules, clear rules that will actually really support, you know, the reusable packaging. I think the less uncertainty, the better.
Thank you. Casper?
Might be highly controversial, but from our perspective, duly consider whether plastic is the right material for you for your food packaging, and whether or not metal, porcelain, or glass could be also a solution.
Thank you. And Birgit?
Casper, I like your comment because I think it goes into the direction I would like to say. So even if you think that a material is convenient, you may, or since you have to consider all the impacts, including the chemical safety, you may have to switch to a material which is less convenient or heavier or easier to clean to make reusable materials a success.
Thank you very much, the three of you, for taking the time yes, to have all this input. Thank you to the audience. We have been more than 80 people here today. Enjoy your lunch break. The next webinar will be in 1 month's time. We haven't decided really yet on the topic, but it will be announced on our channels. Thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of your day.